Stop the cap.
I should not be making this video because I should not be telling white people what they're doing wrong. And really, when I say white people, there's the white ignorance and then there's the white elites that run everything. Now, the white elites might have some other plan, which I really don't think they're that smart. They kind of think things are stagnant, but they might have some other like muhaha, New World Order, nefarious plan. I think that's a very small portion. I don't think, like, even when you talk about white people who are wealthy, there's only a smaller portion of those people that are in the know. You know, the type of people who get to go to, you know, I mean, back in the day it was Jekyll Island. Now it's the Trilateral Commission, Davos, the Bilderberg Group, right? The Illuminati, ooh, Bohemian Grove, right? Those people are the people who are in the know, of certain things. But part of me doesn't want to give them that much credit because I feel like certain things would have kind of slipped out by now. But they don't really seem to have a plan, and what they're doing, right, from the standpoint of the system of white supremacy, really undermines the white race, right? And you know how they say, if your enemy is making a mistake, do not interrupt them. That's why I'm kind of reluctant at making this video. And I know I have some white supremacists and white nationalists who listen to me. You know, they float around in my comment sections, different videos. I see their comments pop up. I get the notifications. I see them, and I think that when they come over here, they think they're going to hear a bunch of nigga babble. That's what they think. And then they'll sit there and they'll listen to the video and they'll be like, oh, this nigger's smart. They don't know how to react to it because what I'm saying is different than what they've conventionally been led to believe, right? So I was thinking about the Jacksonville shooter and, the whole great replacement and white people that are, the white nationalists and the white supremacists that are worried about, their birth rates and whatnot. And, I went online and, pulled up some YouTube videos and, there's a number of videos where they talk about this declining birth rate of white people. Right. And, I look at it and, white people are not having enough babies. And it's like, okay, what is the cause of that? Now, white conservatives will jump up and they'll be like, oh, it's the liberals. It's the Jews. It's because there's too many homosexuals and we're not living in the light of Christ, right? They'll throw up all that bullshit. And I'm like, okay, fuck it. Let's go with that, right? So they want to blame Jewish people and say that there's, a conspiracy to eradicate white people. And then they'll come with the Bible and the religious aspects and they'll say there's a moral decay. There's which is all, again, I don't know how white people think of themselves as the moral compass of the world with all the transgressions of their ancestors and things that they currently do in order to maintain power. Again, morality and Darwinism can't occupy the same space because what you would do to maintain power, is antithetical to Christian values or concepts of morality based off of the Bible and Christianity. Right? I've already said the Bible is one of the most racist books ever when all it does is talk about tribes, this tribe versus that tribe and all that other stuff. But that's neither here nor there. My point is whatever the white conservatives want to do from a Christian standpoint isn't going to change the fact that the capitalists don't want to pay anybody. I don't care how much white Jesus you sprinkle on it. If men, period, not just white men, if men, period, are not gainfully employed, that is the end of patriarchy. That's a wrap. Now, feminists say, that they want patriarchy to end, but the dumbest thing about feminism is women don't want to date down. Women, when women talk about feminism, they just want it to be a situation where men don't have all the control and have all the say, but yet they still want to engage in, hypergamous relationships. So women will think, oh, well, let me make six figures so that a man can't control every aspect of my life, right? But then they only want to date men that make, she's making 100,000. Oh, they only want to date a man making 200,000. Then if a woman's making 200,000, she only wants to date a man making 300,000, right? And we already know that that the higher she goes, the smaller the pool of eligible men are for her, right? And this completely ignores what the men are looking for, because men, of high position, they have way more options than she does, and they're looking for young, attractive, cooperative women. And again, feminist women tend not to be that, and they completely ignore, even how they look themselves. They have no clue, whether they're actually attractive to, the collective of men, or the average man out here. They want what they want, and they think that it's all about their decision. Well, I'm here and I'm successful and I have this, and I'm therefore entitled to this, and it doesn't work that way. And again, women don't want to propose to men, and men don't want women to propose to them. So like women just don't have the upper hand in that regard. And feminism to me is just dumb, when at the end of the day, nobody seems happy unless, they're in a traditional relationship where the man is making more money, and he's able to provide, a more than comfortable, lifestyle. A lot of Americans have this idea of, what it is to be middle class, that it's based off of the 1950s. And looking back at it, that was completely an anomaly. It's a historical anomaly. But that's what people think is America. People think the Wonder Years is America. That's literally what they believe. And as I've said before in other previous videos, that only existed because of the post World War II economy, because Europe was bombed to hell. Japan, was bombed to hell. China wasn't a player, right? Because now you got everything's made in China and Shenzhen, and Apple's over there, and a bunch of other companies are over there that are now leaving, because it's a one party, state, and all you have to have is Xi Jinping get a hair in the crack of his ass, and then next thing you know, all the billions of dollars of investment that a company, has invested to outsource jobs over there, because they don't want to pay American wages, all their money can get screwed up. So they want to go to a place that actually has a democracy, because in democracies, you can throw your money around and influence the politicians to vote on the behalf of corporations, as opposed to on the behalf of the people. Just the same way that Israel has essentially beat America at its own game by using AIPAC, to support politicians and fund their campaigns. And therefore, the politicians serve the interest of Israel, and they don't serve the interest of the American people. This is what gives validity to those people on the, far right and the anti-Semitic people, when they talk about, some sort of, evil Jewish cabal that's controlling everything. Again, I wouldn't argue. And even a Middle Nation, he has a video, breaking down, who the power players are, how many power players there are, that are Israeli or Jewish, and he just says, all that stuff is just, a whole bunch of, conspiracy. However, that is not to say that Israel or Jewish people don't have any influence when it comes to, politics, because they do. And it would be intellectually dishonest to suggest that they don't. Again, whoever that billionaire was that pulled his hundreds of millions of dollars out of, I forget what it was, either Harvard or University of Pennsylvania, and the president of the University of Pennsylvania, had to resign. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because universities are businesses, they're institutions, and when somebody's throwing $100 million at a school, right? Or whether it's one person or a combined group of people, that has consequences. You see? And this is something that black people don't understand, because black people keep running around thinking that people are going to do the right thing because it's right or because they said so. And we don't understand the money game, right? But that's a whole nother conversation. That's along the lines of the Amos Wilson and Dr. Claude Anderson conversations. That's not the purpose of this video. But, I listened to Tariq Nasheed. I know a lot of people, I see comments where people talking about Tariq's a grifter and everything. Look, I'm going to say this. I was online back when Tariq Nasheed was talking all his Mac lessons and all that dumb shit, and, monograms on Mariah Carey's seats, and that makes you feel some type of way, even though previously, prior to that, he had made the comment about how I don't care how much money a woman's making, but yet monograms on a seat makes a man feel some type of way. Like, it's total contradiction. But now, after Hidden Colors, he's pivoted to, these, pro-black conversations, and the white supremacists call his show, and they talk their bullshit. It's a bunch of white supremacists and a bunch of African tethers, and Caribbean tethers that come on his show, and they try to disrupt and whatnot, and he entertains them. But I in particular like listening to the white supremacists and their thinking and their belief system. And like I told you, a lot of this stuff is loser shit. There's a lot of sexual inferiority that white men have that, in my opinion, is the byproduct of movies like Birth of a Nation, porn sites like Pornhub and Blacked.com, the way that black men have been promoted in their hypermasculine image, not just through gangster rap, street culture, but also sports and athleticism. They really feel sexually inadequate compared to us, even though they don't want to admit that, right? Things like black guys working out, going to the gym, even some of these calisthenic videos where these guys are, black men work out when they go to jail. Black men, work out, in the parks in New York, and as much as I cringe at the idea of black men only seeing themselves as sex gods and whatnot, there's a lot of generalized white male insecurity that surrounds that, because, while they try to paint the picture that, white women would never, and, that, it's all a one-way street of black men lusting after white women and raping white women. Again, we don't know the interactions that go on between white men and white women. We don't know how white women are reacting to images of hypermasculine black men that pop up on the TV when we're not there, right? When oh, let's watch Creed, and then she's getting all hot and bothered watching Michael B. Jordan, fighting Jonathan Majors, right? Or she's getting all hot and bothered when she's watching the Black Panther, and freaking Michael B. Jordan, is fighting T'Challa, talking about, is this your king? You know what I mean? With no shirt on, right? We're not there, right? But again, even myself, as a big black man, I can tell you I have experienced quite a few of those sort of situations where I wasn't even looking at the white girl, and white guys have, my favorite is again, I'm a 300 plus pound man, and they'll throw their shoulder in you and bounce off of you, and you're like, what, little man, what are you doing? You know what I mean? I've had that happen in bars and stuff like that. So there's definitely the threat They want to paint the picture. Oh, it's, we got to protect the chastity of white women. But at the end of the day, they know that white women, are not as faithful and sexually loyal to them, as, they would like to believe. And they feel some type of way about that. And again, when you're fed, lies about, who you are, what you are, your identity, and you buy into, your racial superiority, just as many black people have bought into their racial inferiority, you end up with a situation where you start believing the hype about yourself. Same thing goes on with white women, where white women, they just think that they got it like that. And, you bring them into spaces with other, minority women. And all of a sudden, the confidence, drains because, men are not paying attention to them as much as they thought, was going to be the situation, and the scenario. Whether they feel like they don't have an ass, or all these women, they don't wrinkle as much, or, they're, again, going back to that, even though they were doing drugs, it wasn't really a fair comparison. But like the Olsen twins versus Nicki Minaj and the 10-year difference that existed between them, things like that, I mean, Captain Solo has an example of, he was, where he was working in theater, and, one of the white women who was she was one of the dancers, and she just told him point blank. She said, damn right, we feel some type of way because, we definitely crack before black women. Absolutely. That melanin, is something else. And he was like, oh, okay. He was like, that was the first time, a white woman actually admitted, just admitted like, yeah, we feel some type of way about the fact that, by, our mid 30s, we're pretty much done, in terms of beauty. Right. So I'm just saying all that to say that, there's insecurities, that are there where these white folks run around and they've, drank the Kool-Aid. I listen to these white supremacists on Tariq Nasheed's, on his show, and they have this sort of idea, like they'll talk about like in Europe, like either it's we dominated the world and we conquered the world, right? Or it's the idea that, white people invented everything and therefore other races should be thankful because they'd still be living in the Stone Ages if it wasn't for us. Right? They have that sort of attitude. And the thing is like, again, they're not looking at it from the standpoint of when you go around the world and you conquer, the rest of the world, through your warlike state of being, going back to the Iceman inheritance, and you're able to vacuum resources and, the labor, and bring all that wealth back to, your countries, or, Europe as a subcontinent, because really Europe is not its own continent. That's a big fat lie. It's Eurasia. It's one big continent. It's not a separate continent, but that's just an attempt at Europeans trying to, separate themselves from the Asian. But it's Eurasia, is the continent. But in any event, I'm saying they went around the world, vacuumed up all the resources, and brought it back to Europe, and that allowed them to have this sort of industrialization, this sort of Renaissance type of period, where they were. I mean, if you have colonies and you're becoming wealthy off of the backs of other people, yeah, you can do that, and that frees you up, and then you're able to invent things, and you're able to because you're not out there in the fields, right? You're not engaging in what Europe was engaged in for I mean, since the beginning of its existence, which is feudalism. As I said before, the default culture for white people is feudalism. Kings, queens, nobles, and peasants, and for some reason, white supremacists have this idea that if like, again, going back to what was his name, Tim Rollins, what was the guy's name that was on Joe Rogan? Tim was Dylan. Well, I forget what his name was. Anyway, where he made the point referencing somebody else: invade the world, invite the world. And so when you look at like all the migrants, yeah, you destabilized other regions around the world, and now all those people, are coming into Europe, and they're being allowed to come into Europe because, again, going back to European birth rates, their birth rates are in the shitter, and they're not having enough babies. And I've talked about this before, in reference to the white oligarchs. They want their cheap labor. See, before, again, with that default system, it was feudalism. It was work the fields, till the fields. I mean, basically, you could think of white people as, because there's a parallel between white people in feudalism in the whatever, the Middle Ages, and African Americans in America in sharecropping. It's basically the same thing. And so, white people have consistently demonstrated that this is how they operate. The concept of the Wonder Years America, it was an anomaly if you look at just how Europeans functioned historically over time. They did not have these open, free societies with equal rights and whatnot. No, they had a ranking system. They had hierarchies. And so what's so interesting is you have these white Americans that take on this approach like, oh, these minorities and everybody else is ruining America. But like, no, what's happening is the white elites who have acquired enough power at this point to basically do what the fuck they want to do are reverting back to European base instincts, which is a system of feudalism where there's only a handful of rich people and everybody else, are poor. America already had this phase with the Gilded Age, during the late, what would that be? The late 19th century. They already had that. And again, if you don't know what the Gilded Age was, or you need a refresher course, there's a bunch of videos on YouTube about the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age is what really brought about, the unions and the sort of 40-hour work week holidays, paid leave, all that sort of stuff. Child labor laws, right? Which again, there's the people run around, white supremacists run around with this idea that like, white capitalists or white elites put whiteness first, and their priority is to preserve whiteness. And it's not, because when you go back in time and you really look at how the white elites functioned, and you see those cartoon characters of the trust, those 1890 cartoons and 1900 cartoons of big, they showed like the banker with the top hat and he's morbidly obese, and there's, some person, that's basically scrawny or skinny or going without, and they're just like these fat cats. They're just hoarding all the wealth. Again, that is the base culture of the European. In Europe, it was kings, queens, nobles, and peasants. And then the capitalists basically eliminated the monarchies, with the exception of a handful that basically, abdicated power or gave the illusion of giving up power, right? Like the British monarchy. Right. I keep trying to tell people, I'm like, Canada is not a free country. Australia is not a free country. New Zealand is not a free country. If you go over and you look at who's in charge of the military, it is what is it? King Charles, right? It was Queen Elizabeth. Queen, I think it was Queen Victoria, gave Canada its quote unquote independence through royal ascension. But basically, she retained power. When they take oaths, I think in Australia, they had an Aboriginal woman who was, to give, an oath before she took office. And it was all about, basically bowing to Queen Elizabeth. And she didn't want to do that. You see? So, the British Crown wanted to save face and not be embarrassed by the rogue colony that was the 13 colonies that ultimately became the United States of America. They didn't want to have that happen again. That changed a lot of things. And then you had, even in France, King, what was that? King Louis the 13th, which way, and this was even before that. But I'm saying, Mary Antoinette, all that, where the population was pushing back, right? You had the rise of Lenin in Russia, right? The population is pushing back at the ruling class. And in my, opinion, you're going to see more of that in America. It'd be like a January 6th, but not with the whole far right wing, and we're not there yet, in my opinion, as a country, because, of the division. And it is the goal of the uh, elites to maintain, that division, to make the January 6th people look like, racist, and that they were, extremist in their views and whatnot. Not saying that they weren't, but I'm saying that, that sort of being upset with the government. See, that's starting to hit, and this is where the Democrats are going to be disadvantaged. That's starting to hit, with the Democrats. Democrats, I don't think the Democrats are going to win an election for quite a while, due to, where things, are headed. Aside from, the people wanting to cease fire with against, between Israel and Hamas. That's like a side note. It just adds to it. And it also depends on, what happens when Trump is in office, because I think Trump will definitely win this election. We've already seen what happened, Nikki Haley, and the fact that, the New Hampshire primary, and they went for Trump. But I'm just saying that eventually it'll get to a point where people get sick and tired of being sick and tired, because they can't make it in this country. And you have two generations now, millennials and zillennials, that can't even afford to start families. So it's always comical to me when you have, white supremacists running around talking about we need to make more white babies, and they want to blame Mexicans, blacks, Jewish people, Afghan immigrants and everything else. And I'm like, that's still, like, you can blame them all you want. You're cowards, because you never address, the aspect of capitalism and how that's set up, and you think that, somehow unions are socialism, or unions are, they got you twisted with the idea that all these things are socialism or communism, and you go for the unregulated capitalism. And unregulated capitalism has essentially gotten everybody here, to where they can't afford to buy a house, they can't afford, to get their life started, they can't afford to start families, right? And this affects everybody, which is why I'm speaking on it. But I'm speaking to the paranoia that the white nationalists and the white, supremacists, tend to have, and not looking at what their system actually is. They're so focused on looking at everybody else that they're not focusing on their own pathologies, or the pathological broken nature of their own system. Even I didn't think that the white elites, and many of those from the boomer generation, would be as so stupid to undermine their own children. Like, that's not white supremacy. Like, your own children can't even afford to procreate. Like, I'm like, what are y'all doing? But again, in my opinion, capitalism is antithetical to white supremacy. And I don't think a lot of white folks really, think in those terms, or white nationalists, think in those terms. They're so busy focused on everybody else. I'm like, sorry, we don't run the Fortune 500 companies, us minorities. We don't run, the banking cartels, right? We don't run that. Okay, we don't run. We're not the reason why you can't afford a house. Like I mean, hell, we weren't even able, as especially as black people, we were denied FHA loans. We weren't able to purchase homes in certain neighborhoods. So we have nothing to do with why, Boomer McBoomer was able to buy a house for $50,000, and now that house is worth $430,000. We have nothing to do with that. That's your system. That's your system. And many of you all don't want to face the reality of what, like, that this is your system and your system is failing you. You want to blame everybody else. Going back to what I was saying about Europe, what would be impressive to me? What would be impressive to me would be if um what would be impressive to me if it, like going back to, I'm got ahead of myself, but going back to talking about Tariq and the white supremacist call it show, and talk about the awesomeness of Europeans and what Europeans have accomplished. What would be impressive if Europeans were like the Wakandans in Black Panther, where they had a self-contained society, right? That they didn't need to leave Europe. They were so, innovative and had so much ingenuity, that Europe was like Rivendell in Lord of the Rings where the elves stay. Right, like in order to get to white Europe, in order to get there's like a huge ice wall around Europe, right? And then like you gotta walk through a waterfall, and then you walk through the waterfall, and then all of a sudden it's like freaking mythological King Arthur, Britain and shit like that. This fucking white bitch riding a unicorn or some shit. Shit's looking like the movie. What was that movie called? Oh, what was that movie called in the fucking 80s? Damn, Legend. It's like the movie. Is it Legend? Is it Legend? The one with the unicorn and freaking the guy he's like in a wheelchair now because he had a stroke. What was his name? Tim something. He also played the butler in Home Alone. He played Satan in that movie, or a devil in that movie, and that's like the ultimate devil in terms of. I still think that's just like a magnificent role he played, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, that movie, right? They want you to think that if it wasn't for all of these Muslims and black people from Africa and all these other people, that's what Europe would be. But they always completely ignore the rape, pillage, and plunder that they went out there in the world in order for Europe to be what it is. Europeans are not self-actualized. The French, one of the previous French, prime ministers or presidents or whatever they got over there, he basically said, hey, if we weren't fucking the shit out of Africa, what I mean, with all the francophone nations, it didn't force them to, basically have their currency connected to ours and, get all the raw materials out of Africa. Like we would be like a second world country. People wouldn't be living, the way that they're living. Our lifestyles are predicated off of the exploitation of people outside of this country. But yet white people will talk about their own superiority. Because it brings me back to the Jacksonville shooter, and what he said in his manifesto, where he's like, if it wasn't for Europeans' charity, the Africans would be in Africa and they would starve. I'm like, what the fuck were we doing? Like, what the fuck were we doing before the Europeans showed up? Motherfuckers were there living thousands of years, surviving for, not even thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, surviving, functioning, operating, having their civilizations. And here comes the European, like, oh, yeah, you were starving when we found you. It reminds me of like that scene with the Great Race, I think it was, with freaking Charlie Brown. When Peppermint Patty comes up to the cabin and the boys are in the cabin, and it's like, we found you, Chuck. Thank God we found you, Chuck. It's like, bitch, we've been here. They were in the cabin cooking and shit. Charlie Brown apron on. They in there by the fireplace, warm and cozy. She's like, oh, thank God we found you, Chuck. Wait, you found us? Huh? How does that work, right? Like acting like, you should be thankful that we found you. Just nuts, and it's like, honestly, when you really look at a lot of these white supremacists and how they think about their own whiteness and white civilization, they're just as bad as women. Like, they're just as bad as women. I hate to say it, but it's just true. Because women will do shit like that. Women will sit there and try to just take credit, for shit that like clearly they don't do. You know what I mean? Yes, and women inspire men to do great things. And it's like, but you don't build, maintain, or defend the physical infrastructure of society. Sorry, ladies, you don't. Yes, but we inspired you to. And that's how like white supremacists are. They just come in the room and they try to take credit for every goddamn thing, just everything. But anyway, birth rates. Let's talk about the birth rates and white people not having enough babies. Going back to what I was saying about um, the regardless of what you want to say about, it's a lack of values, it's a lack of morality. Oh, that's why Western civilization is declining. It's not going to change the fact that the white oligarchs, the white capitalists, do not want to fucking pay you. And when it comes to them bringing immigrants into the country, yeah, you're being replaced with a population that the situation is so dire in their countries due to Western civilizations and white nations meddling in those countries, be it the United States meddling in South America or Europe and they're meddling, in foreign places around the world, shit like the, East Indian, what is it, the Dutch East Indian Company, right? Or removing Mossadegh, who was an elected leader of Iran, and then trying, replacing him with a puppet who was the Shah of Iran. Just shit like that. Assassination of world leaders, CIA, just all that crap. The killing of Lumumba. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just all around the world, meddling. Okay. And so these people come flooding into Europe. They come flooding into America looking for economic opportunities. Well, again, American people are not, or white Americans are not having babies, right? Because they expect a certain, quality of life. They want the Wonder Years life, right? I mean, you have a whole white culture that basically says, because they chastise black people about this. Well, I mean, if you can't afford children, then maybe you shouldn't have any kids. Right, that's just the responsible thing to do. Well, white people have subscribed to the responsible thing to do, and the employers are not paying them, and therefore what happens? They don't have kids. And again, women are not trying to have kids with broke men. I mean, if anything, what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with this sort of polygamous society, which is antithetical to the very Christian values that, in other words, the Christians, are becoming more like the Muslims who have polygamy in their society than they would like to, or more than they would like to admit, because that's essentially what you're seeing. I mean, again, I go over to the CDC. And when you look at the CDC, because it's not that CDC report that I talked about, with the 61% of black women being mothers and only 45% of black men being fathers, every race of man is producing significantly less children than the women of their particular race. Every race of man. You see, so it's always been women would rather go out there and procreate and have children and be, one of the women in a rich man's harem than to actually be with, a low quality man or a man that doesn't have resources. And this goes right back to, America or Western civilization collapsing because, again, the capitalists seem not to give a fuck about the economic viability of young men. The system is not set up as such. And it's just basically been a runaway train. And it's not going to change until these politicians are voted out of office, and which means that pretty much everybody would have to vote again on the basis of not only age, but they would have to vote on the basis of, economic reform, which on paper, it would have to cover everybody. It's not just going to be, just white people. Just white. We want unions for just white people. We want high wages for just white people, right? It's not going to work like that. And again, like, white people have this whole, like, the white people want to be a white supremacist nation, but they want to have the illusion of having, being the moral compass, right? The illusion of being, this sort of, morally just person that everybody can look to. Well, essentially, they've already lost that. And there's no greater shining example than what's going on, with the United States unequivocal support of Israel and, 25,000 Palestinians dead, right, on land that, again, is not theirs. You're Ashkenazi and you're from Europe. You're from Poland. You're from Russia. You're from Germany. You're from what was it? Austria, Hungary. You know what I mean? These are the places that you're from. Ukraine. You know what I mean? You're not from, the freaking Middle East. There were only 5% of the population, in 1890, and they were 50% of the city of Jerusalem. Yes, there's been Jews there, the Mizrahi Jews, right? But the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews are not from there. And again, like what's going to end up happening, in my guess, estimation, because the America is just entirely too divided, and the white nationalists can't get their heads out of their ass. So what's going to end up happening is capitalists are going to continue to do what they do. America will just falter and crumble. The capitalists will abandon America and try to take their capitalism elsewhere, which is why, despite, whatever racist views some white Americans have, you see, Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink and a handful of other, key people over there shaking hands with Mohammed bin Salman. You know what I'm saying? Like you see them, over there, shaking hands and trying to make deals on a global level, because all they care about is capitalism. They don't care about, what's going on with the white people. They don't care about that. They're not going to do anything to turn it around. And I think that's a significant change, from, how. No, I guess I can't say that, because if the Gilded Age was like it was, like, again, the Memorial Day Massacre, the Ludlow Massacre, the Latimer Massacre, the Homestead Act Massacre, right? These, Carnegie and these other, like, barons of industry, they weren't trying to pay. They went as far to actually kill people. The Ludlow Massacre, they got the National Guard to come over there and they mowed them people down. It might have been the army, but I think it was the National Guard. Brought out the Maxim machine gun and just over the tents and shit. Go ahead, watch some videos on that. So while y'all are running around, America is a white nation, America is a Christian nation, America is a Judeo-Christian nation, and white people first, the capitalists essentially, have only put in white people first to the extent that they needed them, to be first at the time. But now they're more on the globalist tip. They don't give a fuck about you. But many of you all, you don't get that. So, at the end of the day, um, what I see happening in the long run, and this is another reason why, again, I tell black people, y'all need to stay strapped up, because these white folks, they're gonna be in their feelings. Okay, because in my opinion, there is going to be a shift, a transition, where I mean, they're already, talking about this. White people will become a minority, by 2050. Okay, they're not. Everybody else is used to poverty. I don't agree with having children in poverty, but everybody else is fucking used to it. White people are still clinging on to, again, they were, for a long time had this particular position of, lifestyle. Now everybody's talking about, well, things are going to change when the boomers die and there'll be a transfer of wealth. Yeah, there'll be a transfer of wealth for those white people whose parents are wealthy. But for the, when the average income for, white Americans is $56,000 a year, whatever the individual, median income is $56,000 a year for white men. You see, like, I'm like, I don't see where that transfer of wealth is going to equate, to, family formation. I just don't see it. Mind you, when the boomers pass on their wealth, which should happen between the next, 5 to 10 years, you know what I mean? The millennials will be somewhere between 40 and 50. You see? So, I don't um I don't see like what people are suggesting about that. I think the system is broken. Again, I keep running the numbers by people. When I look at just the housing market. How the whole concept of houses being an investment, and that somehow you got $1 million homes for working people who work and they have $1 million home, like that sort of system is untenable. So people using homes as investment vehicles, which I'm like, how do you stop that? What do you create laws against that? That's what I'm saying. There's so many aspects of this system that would have to change and be shut down, and though of course be those people who are going to be screaming about communism and socialism. And then, mind you, the people who have made investments. Again, the guy who's getting rich with off of his duplex of having single moms in it. Of course, he's going to fight. He's going to fight that. And the people that are going to fight any sort of change to the system where they would lose their assets, they're the ones that actually have the resources to put up the fight. Everybody else is just bitching and saying, "Oh, I have a vote." But the people that are actually benefiting from the current dynamics, they'll just throw money at the politicians and say, "You better not. You better not." Because in my opinion, it's money that wins the elections. It's not the actual people's vote, because they can get the money, and then you vote them in, and because they made you a whole bunch of empty promises, and then they don't do anything while they're in office, and then you say, "Well, I'm not going to vote for you next time," and it's like, so the fuck what if you don't vote for them next time? Because while they were in office, they did inside training, had a whole bunch of backdoor deals, put out a bunch of contracts and shit like that. So when you don't vote for them and they get out of office, their net worth jumped from, them making, whatever, $200,000 a year to them, having a net worth of 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 million, all the way up to like 100 million, like 120 million, like Nancy Pelosi. You see, it's a win for okay. So what? I lost the next election. I don't get elected. I'm now a multimillionaire. I'm now in the sphere of the wealthy elite. So like I said, the whole system would have to be revamped. And I don't think that people have the intelligence to do that. And I think, especially when it comes to the white nationalists and the white supremacists, they're just too consumed with either hatred or they're some sort of racial superiority complex, and the idea that that the only people who should be living an upper middle class or middle class lifestyle are white people. And they think that simply by bitching that the system is going to change. I mean, I'm having all type of revelations about white Americans and just how ignorant they are about how the system actually works. What I mean? Because again, it's like if I'm looking at a mountain and the white people, they've been up by like the snow-capped mountains. When they look up, the mountain looks small, right? They don't even realize they're on a mountain. They're like, "Oh yeah, that hill over there with the ice on it." Meanwhile, like all the people that are not on the top of the mountain, they see the mountain all the way from the bottom. They see the mountain from the valley where the river is. So they're like looking at this picturesque mountain. They see the whole system. But white people don't see the whole system. They're like in fantasy mode, and they think that they're entitled, to the fantasy or whatever it is they believe that they've been promised, which is this like middle class lifestyle that is predicated off of the exploitation of everybody else. America would have never became America if it wasn't for slavery and basically, building wealth off of the backs of black people and all that money, that exchanged hands because Europeans were like, "What's this new thing called cotton? Oh my God, it's breathable," right? As opposed to the wool and knit, type of sweaters made out of what's that shit, linen and shit like that that Europeans were wearing in Europe, all that itchy shit that's not comfortable to wear. You see? And so, looking at, the all these other groups, because other groups, I mean, the Asian community does have a birth rate issue. They definitely do. And Asian people, their issue is, they're so focused on overachieving and trying to match their idealistic concepts of who and what white people are, that they end up delaying having kids until it's too late. They have kids the latest. I mean, their teen pregnancy is so down that the CDC didn't even put it on the chart when it came to young men and women and them getting pregnant underneath the age of 20. I mean, black people's birth rates, may be, I mean, they are due to, our position, in this country, economically speaking, and the way that black children are being born into this world, I think are most certainly problematic. But at the same time, it's still, uh, increases the birth rates, well past, what's going on with white folks. And then you got the Hispanics, they're pretty much doing the same thing. So their birth rates are high. So white people, due to their, them wanting to not only have kids, but maintain a lifestyle when they have kids or when they start to have kids, it just contributes to, them not having kids. On top of the fact that independently of whatever their desires are, the white elites don't want to pay them. And the white elites would rather pay Jose and Maria and immigrants that are coming into this country, because they're willing to work for lower pay and to have a family, uh, that would be considered a lower quality of life to most Americans. Okay, they will, basically live, in conditions that a lot of white people would consider abhorrent. They're willing. I mean, they're willing to opt to function like that in mass. And then they always have the option of making their money here, and then going back to Mexico, and then that money stretches even further. I remember I was dating a Mexican chick, and she told me about how, it's kind of fucked up, because what ends up happening is the money goes back home, and then it inflates the markets back home, because all the vendors and the local business owners are like, well, hey, if you're getting money from America because your relatives are sending money back here, I might as well increase my prices so that I can make more money off of the families that are, getting money from America. The problem is for them, or the people that are there's the people that don't have family members in America, they get priced out. And then that only, facilitates them going into, illegal activities, joining the cartels and other things, because how else do you make money locally? It's either the cartels or you have a relative in America, right? So, and I don't think, people are talking about whether America is going to go into Latin America and try to stabilize the region. Why would they do that? The white oligarchs want their cheap labor. Stabilizing Central America would do what? Unless they could somehow, get their grubby hands on it and find a way to exploit to their benefit by keeping those people there, they're not going to do it. I mean, have you seen the big giant Amazon factory that's sitting right there? I think it's in Tijuana. And then there's like like shanty towns all around the Amazon. Have you seen the image of it? Maybe I'll use that image as the thumbnail of this video. Okay? The white oligarchs don't want to pay any fucking body. And that includes white people. And white people haven't wrapped their heads around that. Not yet. Some of the millennials are, they're getting it. The younger people are getting it. The boomers, they're fucking lost. The world that they lived in does not exist anymore. The white boomers are essentially, they're irrelevant.
But the only thing that does make them relevant is the fact that they go to the polls. They go and they vote for the shit that they want, which is to basically, have their social security and have all the laws favor them until they fucking die at their own grandkids' expense. You see? And that's what they're going to fucking do. And the young people, they're not. I mean, I haven't heard. I mean, I hear all this shit like Donald Trump's the savior, but I haven't heard anything specifically as it pertains to jobs. I don't hear white male young Republicans saying we need unions. I don't hear that shit coming from them. I don't hear them talking about we need full medical and dental. I don't hear them talking about we need universal health care. That's a liberal thing. Like, I don't hear them talking about that. They're like stuck on, yeah, gotta keep my guns. You know what I mean? We gotta close the border. And the thing is when I hear them talk about closing the border, they always talk about closing the border from the standpoint of like, the shit that Donald Trump says. Criminals and drug dealers are coming across and rapists are coming across the border. That's not why you want to cross. That's not why you should want to close the border. You should want to close the border so that the fucking white oligarchs can't, undermine you with cheap Mexican labor. Again, go on YouTube, go on Google and type in Bear Creek Arsenal gets raided by immigration. You know why Bear Creek Arsenal? Bear Creek Arsenal is a gun manufacturer. You know why they got raided? They got raided because they had illegals working for them, to make their barrels for their AR-15s. So the irony of that is you got guns that y'all support, and you got the aspect of they brought in the illegals so that they could, basically, charge the next nothing. And then there's some other like funny shit going on where they have some of these children that are getting separated from their parents. They're saying that they're being exploited. That some of these teenagers, because I think there was an incident where, let me see, let me Google that shit right now. Um, Oh, I forgot to talk about Benjamin Franklin. Let me bring that up in a second. Let me see. Mexican teen falls in meat grinder, something like that. No jail for owner of Michigan meat processing company after teen loses hand. This is August of 2023. Michigan, a judge declined to impose any jail or probation for the owner of a Michigan meat processing company after a teen worker lost his hand in a 2019 incident with a meat grinder. The owner of the 55-year-old, I'm going to know where's the victim, who is 17 at the time, lost his hand November 2019 while operating a meat grinder under Wilbur's supervision, according to the Michigan attorney. Okay, blah, 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 blah. The Youth Employment Standards Act that didn't have to work permit needed for under 18. I don't know. I'm going to see. Is it going to say whether this dude was the Mexican? I'm pretty sure he was a Mexican. I'm going to see if this article is going to say that. Give me a second. 17-year-old apologized. The attorney further claimed that the 17-year-old lady, I did what you told me not to, I did what you told me not to do. During the sentence, the judge, so he didn't follow the rules, admitted that he'd been warned, suffered, 17-year-old. Maybe that's not it. Hold on. Give me a second. 16-year-old boy dies in accident at Mississippi poultry plant. A 16-year-old boy from Guatemala died as a result of an on-the-job accident at a poultry plant in Mississippi. And let me see. Woman dies, 35. No, that's not it. She falls in a meat grinder in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. I don't know. Oregon worker dies. Meat. All right. So anyway, I'm saying that one with the Guatemala, you see, 16-year-old. What is a 16-year-old immigrant from Guatemala doing working in a factory? You see what I'm saying? Again, they don't want to pay people. But y'all white nationalists, y'all running around talking about, you know, my bootstraps and hard work. This is just the reality of the situation. Now, what I was gonna say about, you know, the how the white elites, feel. This is Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin, in his memoirs in 1790, referred to a race of renegades, I don't think that's the word, and crackers, equally wild and savage as the Indians, who inhabit the deserted woods and mountains. In his what is this? Malcolm says a cracker. Okay, no, that's talking about Malcolm X. But anyway, Benjamin Franklin didn't like poor whites in rural America. And let me go here to the Wikipedia page if I can get there. Give me a second. Nope, let me go in here. Oh, come on. Yeah. Hold on. Where's this at? Come on. No, Wikipedia. Here it is, cracker term. Check this out. And I think I read this before. Here it is. Your lordship, cracker's name. Okay, here we go. We don't know what to do with these crackers. We tell them to settle this area, and they don't. We tell them not to settle this area, and they do. And this is from the label followed Scottish American immigrants who were often seen by officials as unruly and ill-mannered. The use of the word is further demonstrated in official documents where the governor of Florida said, and this is the governor of Florida, and that's another thing that white people ignore. All white Americans their whiteness was not valued equally. The only white people that were valued were essentially Anglo-Saxon Americans. First off, the British have always had a tumultuous relationship with those white people of Ireland and Scotland. I mean, isn't that the whole point of the movie Braveheart and William Wallace and all that other shit? And the motherfuckers is constantly. I mean, that's the whole basis of the freaking, what is that? The PLO, no, the IRA. The IRA, remember all those bombings? Some of you all are too young to remember, but them Irish people were, bombing the shit out of the British, blowing up buses, blowing up. I mean, that was the whole. What was that song in the 90s? In your head, zombie, 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 oh. Right, that whole video covers that subject. You know what I mean? So again, y'all running around like, oh, white people form Voltron and shit. White people have always had racism amongst themselves. When the Italians came to America, Sacco and Vanzetti, you know what I mean? They labeled as spies, killed them motherfuckers. That's what they did. And then when all these other immigrants came, they were poo-pooed on, right? The whole, what is it, United States versus Miller, because which was about, I think the guy was he had an Italian background. I don't know why he had named Miller, but in any event, the whole concept was, we don't want, no. It was before that. There was a case before that. Maybe it wasn't Miller. I think Miller might have been the short barrel shotgun or issue, and whether it's like that whole sporting goods thing. I got to go back and look at the case. But basically, the gun laws in New York were if you ever seen the movie, what was that shit called? Gangsters of New York, or what's Gangs of New York? That was it, Gangs of New York. Again, concepts in that movie. We don't want we don't want those people, having guns. So I don't know where, and this is like the whole thing with, once people took on this sort of American identity of what it is to be a white American, and everybody's like trying to run to that because they're trying to gain some sort of privilege, from that. That's why you see Nikki Haley, freaking basically denying her Indian ancestry and whatnot, even though she'll say, "Oh, I'm a brown girl." Bitch, why'd you change your fucking name? I say the same thing to Jewish people. Jewish people always running around like Ben Shapiro. Oh, there's no racism. There's no racism. Racism. You black people are crying too much. So say it the group of people who came to America and changed their fucking name. You know what I'm saying? Jenny Jones's name is not Jenny Jones. You know, who else is there? Jenny Jones. There's who's the Stan Lee. Stan Lee's name is not Stan Lee. Freaking Kirk Douglas's name is not Kirk Douglas. It's like Danielvich or some shit like that. These motherfuckers changing their name. I mean, you could just go Rodney Dangerfield's name is not Rodney Dangerfield. All these motherfuckers change their name. And they got the audacity to sit there and look at black people and be like, "You black people, I don't know what y'all talking about. America's not racist." Yeah, to a motherfucker who looks white because they are of the Caucasian race, but they got to change their last name in order to dodge all that shit. You know, it's like, and Nikki Haley going up there. Have y'all seen Nikki Haley's son-in-law? Go Google Nikki Haley's son-in-law. You know what I mean? And then you're going to sit there and look at her like, bitch. You know what I mean? And you go up there and say that shit with a straight face. America is not racist. America was founded on fucking racism. You know, and these white people, they don't understand classism is your issue. It's class. It's not racism and we're protecting. Why are you protecting? And y'all like the fucking the white rednecks that fought to keep the rich white man slaves, right? Like, it just makes no sense. Like, what type of Kool-Aid or Snapple were you had to be drinking to be a poor white man in 1850 to then go off in 1862 or 1861, whenever the Civil War started, to go off and fight, or was it 1863? I don't know. Anyway, to sit there and go off, I know the war ended in 1865, but to go off and fight to keep, and they hit you with all the propaganda. They hit you with all the, to be a white Southerner. A Southerner can lick 20 Yankees, right? That's like, reminds me of that scene in Gone with the Wind. When Rhett came into the room, and was like, "Gentlemen, there's not a cannon factory in the whole South." I love that scene. What does that mean to a gentleman? It means a great many things to a great many gentlemen, sir. Are you saying that Yankees can lick us? I'm saying very plainly that they're better equipped than we are. They've got factories, shipyards, and coal mines, and a fleet that can bottle up our harbors and starve us to death. All we've got is cotton, slaves, and arrogance. We don't want to hear any renegade talk. I'm sorry if the truth offends you. And then the motherfucker tried to bring up that, he was messing with a bitch that already had somebody else's kids because, that was offensive back then. You know what I'm saying? I seem to be, what did he say? I seem to be just something like disrupting your cigars, brandy, and dreams of victory, and then walked off out of the room. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, how do you convince? I mean, you really got to think about the power of that shit to convince a bunch of poor white men that don't have shit, just like in Django. All those white guys, they didn't have shit. You know what I mean? The only two white men in Django that were rich were Big Daddy and freaking Leonardo DiCaprio's character. All the other white men in that movie were poor, but yet they felt superior to the black people, while they were sitting there as overseers and slave catchers and shit. The equivalent of being a poor white man in the South and fighting the Civil War, to help keep white wealthy landowners slaves, is the equivalent of freaking white men today that can't afford to purchase a home, can't afford to take care of a family, fighting to keep Tesla's fucking robots up and running. Like if there was like some iRobot future, You're fighting so that the rich guy can keep his robots that keeps you out of a job. Like, that's some mind fuck shit right there. Like I said, you were 1850, you walking around. Sir, I have some skills that I can offer you on your plantation. Nope, sorry, I have a slave for that. I don't need that. Go to another plantation. Sir, my father was a blacksmith, and I have the trade of being a blacksmith, and I can offer you. Nope, sorry, I got a slave that was a blacksmith. Don't need that either. like what the fuck would you do like in the South in 1850 as a white man? You know what I mean? And instead of being like, we need to get rid of this slavery so we can get rid of some jobs, so we can get some jobs. Nah, y'all was like, yeah, we're better than the blacks. We're racially superior than the blacks. They got tiny Negro brains and are closer to chimpanzees and shit. Like that's what y'all were subscribing to. Like, for real. And they're fucking you over. A lot of race riots happened in the 1920s, because of that. Because of, the immigrants would come here. They didn't want to pay the immigrant shit. And then the black people, they were leaving the South, because, they didn't want to, deal with the fucking Klan that was on the rise. Because in the 1920s, the Klan was just all over the place. They burnt down thriving black communities like Tulsa and Rosewood and Elaine, Arkansas, and Slocum, Texas, and ran the black people out of Corbin, Kentucky. Right? They did all this shit. So black people were like, any place is better than here. And then they went to, places like Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, Ohio, state, places in Ohio, Cleveland, Cincinnati, all these places in the Rust Belt for economic opportunities. You know what I'm saying? But that they ran into conflicts with a lot of the immigrant populations that were coming into the country and also looking for work. So if you really look at the history of labor, in this country, it is the white capitalists, facilitate and foment, conflict, between poor whites, and poor, every other minority group. If it ain't the Mexicans, go on YouTube and look at the Zoot Suit Wars. That was out there in LA, because it always depends on, who the fuck is there. Right? The 1880s, the freaking the white people burned down, the Chinatown, I think in San Francisco, and I think there was another one in Los Angeles. But they burned it down. They created the opium laws, right? Because they felt that, white women were, smoking opium in Asian brothels. They created cocaine laws because, they felt, black dock workers, they gave them the cocaine so that they would work longer, because that's what the Native Americans used cocaine for. They gave it for them to work longer hours, and then they would, cocaine induced, black dock workers, raped a white woman, and they were like, oh, we got to make that shit illegal. Like all these sorts of things that would hit the newspaper. You really got to look at some of these look at some old newspaper headlines from like the 1870s to like the 1920s, 1930s. And you'll see like the paranoia that the newspapers would try to induce and foster in terms of, racial attacks. Two Negroes did this, da 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 da. And they've been doing that shit ever since. It's no different. You know what I mean? Just show you, nothing but, black crime. It's just like with the way that they promote or push crime, where like even with going with the white nationalist bullshit, where they're like 1350, which it's arguably 750, right? Because black men are only 7% of the population. They're 50% of the crime. But when you really look at the actual number of crime, when you look at the fact that you have 330 million people in this country and there's only like 1.5 million people in prison. You know what I'm saying? Like, granted, you have people that get out, because you can't, certain crimes, you can't keep somebody in jail forever, based off of a certain crime. But, it's, that's another way to reduce, people's ability to participate, in the workforce. That once a criminal, once a felon, always a felon. They'll throw your, job application, in the trash can. Because think about it, right? It's like they already don't want to pay people, right? And then think about all the bullshit you got to go through to get a job. Oh, and congratulations, you've made it to our 15th interview. Like it's like they don't respect your time. Um, you have all this bullshit now where they have ghost jobs because companies just want to be able to collect resumes so they can, internally compare their current employees with prospective employees. So they create a fake job and a bunch of people apply to that fake job, and then, they just collect people's information. You see, and then, possibly sell it. Who knows what they do with that information? The whole thing is fucking broken. And the only way it's going to change, and even if it's like everybody doesn't have to share the same motivations, right? Like even if a white nationalist was all for unions, like I'd be for unions. We'd be voting for the same thing, right? We got our disagreements and all that other shit, but I'm saying that would benefit the both of us. Now the question is, how how deep does white folks racism run? Like does it run to the point of, where the proletariat of all races, decide to go and they vote a particular way to change the system. And then because the white nationalists or the white supremacists want to have it a particular way where they're on top, they're like, well, if I'm not on top in this new system, well, then fuck it then. Right? So then now they're going to be like anti-union or, anti, reform in the system because they want to be the only people, with the, 4-bedroom house and the 2-car garage. Well, if the niggers are going to have it too, well, then I don't want it. And so we're both just going to sit in the dark. We're both just going to go without. We're both just not going to have, because the only way that you want to have is if you get to be on top. You see, and that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why the divide and conquer shit works and nothing ever gets anywhere, because that's what the white nationalists and the white supremacists want. They don't want, a situation where, I get mine and they get theirs. No. It's like they want to just have it all. Again, kind of like women. I want to be a boss bitch and I want a man to take care of me. How does that work? How are you? I want to make more money than him and I want him. That's impossible. How you going to make more money than him and he goes and pays for everything? How does that work? And with white supremacists, like it's the same thing. I'm like, your enemy is capitalism. Your enemy is this system. See, for a while, you thought you were sharing in capitalism, and for the most part, you were. Because again, if the rest of the world is bombed to hell, yeah, the white elite, they could afford to share with you. I mean, hell, they were paying a 90% tax rate back then. They could, just to speak on how much they could afford, to share and help facilitate, the rise of the white middle class, but they don't need the white middle class anymore. Again, you've blindly supported, like it's like again, going back to the white folks that were, supporting slavery. They get you caught up on patriotism and Americanism and all this other bullshit, right, that you see on Fox News. Meanwhile, you're not paying attention and the jobs are going overseas. Meanwhile, you're not paying attention and they're signing free trade agreements like NAFTA, which eliminates tariffs when the tariffs was supposed to be there to prevent, the sort of the cost adjustment and when products come back into the country. Right? That's supposed to protect jobs here. Everything that protects jobs here, has been removed. It's been removed. Let me see. Let me go on. Let me pull up Chat GPT. What policies protect jobs in America? Hold on. Let me see. Okay. Give me a second. What policies protect jobs in America? Let's see what comes up. Fair Labor Standards Act, Occupational Safety Act, Equal Opportunity, Family Medical Leave, National Labor Relations Act, Bargaining of the Mutual Protection. It establishes National Relations Board overseeing enforcing these rights. Work adjustment, restraining. See, all these are not. What? No. What protects the interest of American jobs? Job outsourcing. Let's see what it says. This is just vague shit. Trade policies. Buy American Act. The Buy American Act requires the U.S. government to preferentially select domestic products over foreign ones in its purchases. This is aimed at supporting American businesses. Yeah, but that one makes sense. The government itself, yeah, that makes sense that you would deal with what's produced here, because you can regulate what's produced here. You can't regulate what's produced overseas, like the quality of it and all that other shit. Like they could say, oh, we're giving you this, but it's not really that. And then you got to sit there and have your quality control people, look at it and be like, oh, this is out of spec. But you have way more regulation because you can't fuck around with federal contracts. Federal contracts are big, give you lots of money, but you can't fuck around. Tax policy, business decisions regarding outsourcing, tax incentives for keeping jobs within the country. But notice, like, this is vague. Like, this isn't telling me anything. Tariffs and trade barriers. Well, we've essentially eliminated that. Labor standards, regulations, domestic infrastructure investment, skill development and education, incentives for offshoring. Incentives, implementing policies that incentivize companies to bring jobs back to the United States. Yeah, but this is what you would do, but these aren't the policies. These aren't policies that have actually been enacted. Public awareness advocacy, Yeah, I'll have to add, I'm gonna do some more research on that because I want to know what laws currently exist that actually take a protectionist position. But again, there's that other aspect of the fact that, America, and this is the problem that I think America has in terms of what it enjoyed before, which is, the standard, the cost of living in America is exceedingly high. And around the world, it was, obviously, they had to go through their industrial revolution. And, the dollar is still stronger than many nations. And so how does a company or corporation justify paying American wages? It essentially can't. Not in order to be competitive with the fact that they have to compete now with all these other nations that are also industrialized. Right? So the idea is that the American quality of life would have to fall to become in line, with the rest of the world. And, from a, purely mathematical standpoint, that makes sense. But from a national standpoint, or in terms of, producing children, all that's going to lead to is America looking like Japan. Because, you're going to end up with the inverted, population triangle. Less babies at the bottom, more older people at the top. And then you got young people that have the burden of taking care of the older people, which only pushes back, the retirement age, because you need more people to be working at older ages where they're probably never going to see retirement. You see, and this is going to be a serious problem for millennials, because if millennials don't have kids, and then when they get, freaking 80 years old, right? The idea is who's going to take care of them, who's going to pay for them, who's going to pay for infrastructure. It's the working people, right? You just have these different phases, right? Young people are supposed to, they're born, they're children. Then once they're not children, they're supposed to enter the workforce at 20 years old, around 20 years old. But instead, it's go to college, get an education. So you spend another, 5 years, doing that, getting yourself in a whole bunch of debt, right? And then you get out. And this is, again, even going back to that Jacksonville mass shooter. The whole, he brought that up in there about graduating. You got a bunch of debt. The jobs don't pay shit, right? So then they decide, well, I'm not going to have kids. Then they don't have kids, right? And then if they decide not to have kids at all ever, then you end up with this population of older people that don't have kids, and the economy in the future suffers and stagnates because there's very few young people that are working in an economy, because you can't have an economy boom without growth. And the growth comes from large populations of working people that have, disposable income to spend and purchase things. And, there's new houses being built and new neighborhoods and new, malls and stuff like that. And we know malls are dead because everybody's buying shit offline. Like, truth be told, like, the whole system is changing too rapidly for people to adapt to, especially when you look at AI. And I've been fucking around with AI heavy. And I can tell you that you all have seen, some of the stuff that I've posted in terms of even designing clothes and shit like that, and fashion, and having model. What do I need to pay a model for? I can just tell, the fucking AI, what to generate, and it generates it for me. I can come up with any hypothetical idea or concept, and voila, it's right there. Even when it comes to writing, sending out emails. If you're sending out emails and you're not using ChatGPT, I'm telling you right now, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It is a tool like anything else. And I remember back in the day when, they used to get angry, at people. They didn't want students using calculators, right? And now, like, we all use calculators. Like, most of us, I mean, I think I've forgotten most of my times tables. I just use a calculator. I just put a calculator. I think it's more important to know the process of how to get to the numbers that you're trying to get to than it is to actually sit there and memorize your timetables. But that's a whole nother conversation. I do think you need to memorize your timetables. But I'm saying, we got now, they got rid of cursive. Nobody's doing cursive anymore. But I'm saying, just like with the calculator, oh damn, what was I about to say? Just like with the calculator, damn, why am I going blank? Hold on. My thoughts are getting away from me. Yeah. Just like with the calculator, it's like ChatGPT is like the new calculator, but with language. And that's how I look at it. And it's just a tool that you use in order to, it's like walking around with a personal assistant, quiet as it's kept. There's so much shit talk about, not knowing what you don't know. And then any question I want to ask, I can just simply type it in the ChatGPT and it gives me an answer, and it gives me concepts and ideas of shit that I didn't even know. Like you can just keep asking deeper questions. Okay, what is this? And then it gives you an explanation. And you're like, okay, what is this that you brought up in your explanation? Then it gives you another explanation. I thought Wikipedia was a rabbit hole. Like, no, ChatGPT is a goddamn rabbit hole. But anyway, that's side note. But I'm just saying, in terms of the economy and whatnot, and people and having families, white people, this is your system, and you have created a system, in all of your infinite wisdom and racial superiority that is not sustainable. So that would signify that you're not superior, right? You would think that you would at least produce or create a system that was sustainable, that had longevity in mind, but apparently not. you got Mark Zuckerberg, and I know you're gonna be like the Jews, right? He's over there building, a freaking bunker out there in Hawaii, or so they say. Why is he doing that? Is there something he knows that the rest of us don't know? But I don't want to feed into wild conspiracy theories, but I'm just saying, like the system of capitalism, it's not sustainable if they're not going to pay people. It doesn't work when it gets out of whack. I'm not. Capitalism doesn't offend me. Like I said, I think it incentivizes innovation. If you do well, you get rewarded, you make more money, and you're able to be financially independent and live the dream. But it's not supposed to get to a point where the proles, the proletariat, are not able to sustain themselves. Because then eventually it gets to a point, and this is one of the things that I think that the oligarchs have significantly overlooked. It gets to a point where the people start saying fuck it. And when they say fuck it, good luck trying to uphold standards. That's why the morality argument is trash to me. Rich Cooper and his point about we need to bring shame back. Fuck your shame. Your shame don't mean shit in a world where people can't. You offer nothing. Like this is the whole like the whole thing with like the white people who literally think not only are they the moral compass of the world, but they think that they should be able to define good and bad behavior and be able to define what it is to be a citizen and contribute to society, and you should live up to their standards and whatnot because they are the example, right? And I'm like, again, people only played that game because they got something from white people, or they got something from the white system, or the system that white people by and large controlled. Once that's gone, once that's off the table, fuck you and fuck your rules and fuck your standards. Because at the end of the day, kissing your ass, brown nosing, trying to subscribe to whatever it is that you say is classy or whatever, there's no benefits to it. See, like people, what they ignore is maintaining white supremacy is a full-time job. And to get other people to feed into your white supremacy, you have to not only maintain being supreme, but you actually have to have what other people don't have and they're trying to get access to. And what the global South, as Middle Nation likes to say, recognizes is the fact that Europe doesn't have anything. Their ancestors left Europe, went out there, raped, pillaged, and plundered, which flies in the face of the morality and white Jesus that they like to throw around all the goddamn time. And the global South is recognizing, why are these people running shit? Why are we subscribing to their monetary system and the IMF and all that bull? Why are we subscribing to that? They have no gold, they have no minerals, they have no raw materials. Right? They have very little, fertile land to grow crops on and whatnot. Like, why are we subscribing to their shit? They don't have anything. How does the what do I want to call it? Right? If I say the weakest kid on the block, people will say, well, they're not weak because they have the military industrial might. Yeah, right now they have military industrial might, but they're not even maintaining their own system because good luck trying to get young white men to fight for a system that doesn't benefit them. Good luck with that shit. Right? Because again, minorities, right? Again, they toss white people standards out the window once. Oh, wait. You ain't got no jobs? Wait. You don't have any money? Wait. You don't have anything to offer me that I can't, I might as well be back in my home country because you ain't got your dog, man. Well, fuck your standards. And again, white people will say that internally, to, again, the white oligarchs that are at the top of the food chain of the system of white supremacy, right? Or Western civilization. Ain't nobody gonna fight your war. They can try to have a draft and shit. This goes back to, instituting a draft in America at this time would be a very dangerous proposition, right? This is why they want to pass all the gun control and, get rid of the AR-15s and everything else. Because, in my opinion, I think a lot of young white men have been pushed to the edge. The idea that you're going to force them into a war that most young people don't want, on top of the fact most young men are looking at the shit like, there's no gainful employment, or the employment that's being offered won't allow me to purchase a home, won't allow me to start a family, right? The women, again, women's standards are whatever women's standards are, and I'm saying, everything, like nobody's talking about raping women, right? So whatever women's standards are in Western civilization, like the oligarchs, the business corporation, they have to meet that. Because if women say, I'm not going to sleep with men and procreate with men if they're not here, if they're not in this position, right? Then I'm just not going to do that. And so that's the level, that's the bar that the corporations have to meet. Whatever that lifestyle that the women want to have. Now people can talk about, well, reducing the women's, standards. Well, there's a whole bunch of shit that happens if you reduce women's standards. The women will just go to other men that have, those resources. The women are not race loyal if y'all haven't figured that shit out yet. Women go where the power is. Women go where the money is. That's where women go. Women are not the upholders of any given community and civilization because they don't fight the wars. They're powerless in that regard. They don't go out there and conquer lands and shit like that. No army of women could ever go up against an army of men. You're watching too much Hollywood if you believe that. So women go wherever the dominant force, of men are. And if the white oligarchs are not sharing the wealth and the white proletariat, basically it loses its what it essentially, the 20th century they were known for, which is being gainfully employed. The women are just going to go elsewhere. They're going to go whatever those resources are. And that's where you get to start talking about BRICS, and you start talking about the global South reorganizing and reorienting itself. And don't get it wrong. The white global powers, they're not gonna just lie down. They'll try to find some way to justify some war, and invade, some foreign land. But the difference is they don't control all the avenues of media. This is why the whole thing in Israel is falling apart. Where before, oh my God, those Muslim terrorists, they attacked the Jews, right? But now people are more informed. There's information. They got ChatGPT. They have the internet. Everybody's got a cell phone. Things can be recorded in real time. Like, real talk, like nobody, like the media is completely countered by social media. Like the mainstream media is completely countered by that. You know what I mean? Like, the motherfuckers just sit there and be like, you lie. You know what I mean? Like, they can just counter it in real time. When the news says this, and it's like, even I remember when CNN tried to do that bullshit, with that general, and, had him, talk about, yes, and this AR-15 is fully semi-automatic, like that type of bullshit. He was up there, just shooting a gun like a little bitch. And you're like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be like the general in the army or some shit like that? The fuck? You holding that fucking rifle like a pussy? Like, huh? What? Just, this shit is just hilarious. But I'm saying, people, they don't buy it anymore. People are getting majority of their information from YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram and Facebook. They're not getting these people are behind the times. They're completely by the times. It's like they're still in the days of print. Now, that's not to say that the mainstream media doesn't still have, its influence, but, everything can be cross-examined in real time now. And so the white oligarchs don't have control of the narrative like they once did. I've seen so much propaganda about Israel on YouTube, and like people just don't buy it. Like people look at they try to come out and they start trying to say things and people are like, yo, that's cap. Just immediately they're just like, yo, that's cap. That's cap. That's just complete cap. And regardless of whatever position people take on Israel, I think that the big problem with the whole Israel question or the Israeli question is the United States, with all our internal issues, should not be influenced and controlled by a foreign power because, they are able to have lobbyists throw millions and tens of millions of dollars at politicians to fund their campaigns so that they win their elections. And knowing that, every, 4 to 6 years, they're up for re-election and they got to go back, and beg the little hats for more money so that they can, go off and facilitate, their campaigns again. That is a major problem that needs to be shut the fuck down. And the only way that that's going to be shut down is, again, the millennials and the zillennials are going to have to go in there and completely vote these people the fuck out. And then put people in who will create a law that says, nope, can't do this. Now, granted, they'll probably come up with another sophisticated way, to go around that, what I mean? Because, there's always loopholes to some shit that they didn't consider. You know what I mean? But I can tell you in healthcare, they put a stop to that type of shit with the pharmaceutical companies and the physicians. Because the pharmaceutical companies, they used to, the pharmaceutical sales reps, the freaking, tickets to games with the, food, whether it was lunches, dinners, tickets to games. They trips, vacations. They're not allowed to do that shit anymore. They were doing that shit heavy in like the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. They were doing that shit heavy, and now that they closed that shit, and it's the same thing. Like you get, let's say you have, I don't know, you got like strep throat or something and then they give you, they'll have, a drug that's less effective than another drug, and they give you the less effective drug because that pharmaceutical company got the physician a new CLS. You see, this conflict of interest. It's not supposed to be like that. But notice how that was shut down. But when it comes to the politicians and getting money from AIPAC, like, oh, they keep that shit wide the fuck open. Wide the fuck open. And so while, these white folks are running around talking on this white nationalist shit, I'm like, you need to focus on classism more than you focus on racism, because your issue is classism. And the people that are the biggest threat to you are the white oligarchs. But, you keep running around there and screaming about how it's the others. It's all these other powerless groups, all these other powerless people that don't run the banks and the corporations and the Fortune 500 companies and are not the ones outsourcing jobs overseas, right? They're not the ones that, that feed off of, like, things like real estate. Like, I think realtors are parasitic. The amount of, the crazy amount of money that they make. I'm like, for what? For what? Because you fucking took some pictures and wrote, freaking, 150 words on Zillow. Like, fuck out of here. And again, even they've had the what is it? The Realtors Association of America made an apology to African Americans for the block busting that happened. Like, nah, nigga, you need to be a part of them goddamn reparations. That's what needs to happen. The freaking Realtors Association of America needs to be fucking dismantled. People should be able to sell their house to, direct peer-to-peer type of shit. But no. We got to have realtors, and we got to have a realtor's license and all that other shit. There's parasites on the system, and people are not paying attention, to that sort of thing. So, that again, things like, what do black people have to do with the fucking, Realtors Association of America? The Realtors Association of America have always been hostile to black people. And basically anybody who wasn't white? Who do you think upheld the racial housing covenants? You see? Some people will argue, well, eventually, they got rid of those, sort of things, but again, look at, like, people's homes being appraised different values because, of their race and things like that, and neighborhoods that still to this day, are, exclusively white. The realtors be in on that shit. But again, even if the neighborhood is exclusively white, that doesn't mean anything to a millennial or a zillennial who can't buy into it. That neighborhood being exclusively white means absolutely nothing to them from that standpoint, because they can't even move into it. You see? So, I already said it in my other video about, the Jacksonville shooter and reading his manifesto, that, these folks, they got the whole system twisted. Their whole ideas, their white identity, what they think whiteness is. And I recognize that, like, it's a way for them to feel superior. Like, if you're a white loser, it's a way for them to feel, that they have something, that they got some, hey, I'm white. I got this whiteness thing going, but they don't got shit else. And that, in my opinion, makes them dangerous when the world is changing faster than their white racial superiority can carry them. So what I mean by that is, like, the world is changing, access to information. America is not the global dominant force, that it once was, or at the very least, it's slipping. Even in terms of America being respected. And that's another thing, because, white folks want to be, they want to be recognized as some sort of benevolent force in the world, even though, people, are beginning to see, America for what it is. And America, its representation is, it's white people. Like, that's what America is what your movies are, your Hollywood, all that shit is white people. That's what they see up there. And in a minute, it's going, white people are going to travel the world, and motherfuckers are going to roll their eyes when they say, oh, you're American. They're going to be like, oh, these motherfuckers. Like, that's what they're going to say. And that's going to have white people unnerved and shit. Because, again, that white privilege shit, they've been running around with that shit for a very long time. You see this with that guy, the Otto guy that went to North Korea and, he fucked around and found out. Like, what are you doing? Yes, I'm going to take this banner in North Korea. And the motherfucker come back to America. They send his ass back brain dead. No fucks given. You see? Meanwhile, Dennis Rodman's sitting up there chilling with, Kim Jong-il. you know what I mean? Like, so, white people don't have that global currency like they once did, because they went around the world fucking shit up, and they're getting called out on it now. And so, they're gonna have some issues emotionally, because they can't handle the fact that it's you just gotta have such like a sociopathic mentality to be angry at the fact that people aren't viewing you the way that you want to be viewed, despite the fact that you have acted in a way that is against the interest of other people. Like, that is insane. To sit there and completely mistreat other people and then expect them to love you. like I still can't wrap my head around that. Like, I would much rather, like, white supremacy run around and just be like, we're the big bad wolf and we're fucking people up because we're supreme and we don't have to answer for nothing. But no, they want you to believe that they are really genuinely good people deep down. And they want you to believe that, despite the fact that their actions are not aligned with that. They want you to believe that. And the other thing is what white people should be doing is they should be challenging the white elites that are doing things globally, that are morally reprehensible. That's what they should be doing, but they're not doing that. And then you have that aspect of, yeah, but me doing this morally reprehensible thing will ultimately benefit you, and you'll be able to live the middle class lifestyle that you want to live because, we went down in there and we exploited this second and third world country by, throwing the CIA at them and killing their leader, and basically causing their nation to be at civil war for the next, 20 years or so. That benefits you. But here's the stupid part. In a situation where people can't even buy homes or whatever, it doesn't benefit them. No foreign policy can you point to that's directly benefiting the American people like right now, right? Because I know that's how nations work. I know that's the trickery that most people don't understand when they look at nations going other place, America, going to other places and like fucking with them. Right? Like, you want cheap oil? Hey, we got to invade the Middle East and we got to fuck with them. You know what I mean? And we got to disrupt their economies and everything else. And then we got to put Halliburton there. And then we got to extract the oil and bring it back to America. And that's where you get $1.29 per gallon when you go to the gas station. You see? Right? That benefits the American people doing some shit like that. Right? But now, like, it's like, if it doesn't even benefit, right? Because in other words, that whole upholds the promise that there's somehow a trickle down economics effect. And a lot of white people like to convince themselves, well, I mean, it's like 50, degrees of separation. I don't really believe in blood oil, but, hey, they're not going to make a whole bunch of noise when they're living comfortably, right? But when you have America operate in a way that's morally reprehensible, and it doesn't translate, it translates to moral condemnation, and it doesn't translate to any sort of individual benefit, right, to the American people, right? So all you're left with is the moral condemnation about how terrible your nation is by helping facilitate the murder of 25,000 people, right? People don't like that. Right. Even though, right, we know that there's clearly a conflict of interest when it comes to, the foreign policy and, the American quality of life. You see, and a lot of Americans don't think about that. They don't think about how the actions of the U.S. foreign policy may benefit them or not benefit them. We're not taught that in school. People don't learn that in school. They learn, America went into Vietnam to contain communism. America went to, to fight the Germans to stop the Nazis. America went and fought the war in the Pacific because, Japan was, expanding, into, the other nations in Asia. The crazy thing is what Japan was doing was basically the American playbook. And then when Japan, was doing it, then all of a sudden America thought, we're going to change the rules. You can't do that. I like that document. What was that shit called? The video, The History of Japan. My favorite part of that clip is when he's like, how about I do anyway? And then Japan just like invades the other nations that are around it. I'm like, that's what the white Europeans were doing. They were invading Africa. They chopped up Africa. They were invading in the Middle East. They invaded India, right? The two opium wars and shit like that. They were invading all over the place. The Japanese do it. All of a sudden, it's a motherfucking problem. The mistake that Japan made was attacking, Pearl Harbor. That was the mistake that they made, because the United States likely would have, ignored it for probably a significantly longer time. You see, but, obviously they decided that, they wanted to, I guess, prevent the United States from you know, I got to look at what the specific reasons are why Japan attacked the United States. Well, let me see what am I talking about? I have AI right here. Why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? Let's see what the answer is. Right? Let's see. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941 as a preemptive military strike against the United States. Several factors contributed to Japan's decision to launch this surprise attack. 1. Imperial expansion. Yeah, we know about the imperial expansion. Resource scarcity, but there's no resources in Hawaii. That's not an answer. U.S. economic sanctions. In response to Japan's invasion of French Indochina in 1940, the United States, along with the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, imposed economic sanctions on Japan, including an embargo on oil and other vital resources. This further intensified Japan's resources. Right? But isn't that funny? I mean, didn't you invade, Africa? Right? Didn't you invade, right, Haiti? And didn't you invade Latin America? Right? Didn't you invade Hawaii? But when Japan does it, it's a fucking problem. Right? Military strategy. Japan's military leaders, particularly those with the Imperial Japanese Navy, believed that seizing the initiative with a surprise attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor would give Japan time to consolidate its territorial gains in the Southeast Asia without immediate U.S. interference. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Yeah, we're going to basically knock their ships out. It's going to take them, months to years to remobilize. And then by the time they do that, we'll be ready for them. Right. So, because, it's right in the middle of the Pacific, obviously freaking Hawaii is a vital, military base in terms of where it's located in the middle of the Pacific. Right. It's like, and then Midway is like halfway between the Japan and the, halfway between the Japan and the United States. Surprise element. Yeah, we just read that, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's never what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's always, whatever we do is okay. But whatever you do, that sets off alarms. So, in my book, all this, rhetoric, and that's one of my biggest issues with white people as a collective is the rhetoric of morality versus their actions. And it's always just like, what that Jacksonville shooter said in that piece that he wrote, talking about, basically, in Asians and white people, they were efficient in their methods of killing and it's something to be praised. But I'm like, he started the whole piece off of talking about black people's savagery and all their violent nature and everything else. But yet that didn't get praised. That was just a bunch of savage heathens running around. But when it came to whites and Asians, he was marveling at their killing efficiency. You see? Like, and he still placed, white people above Asians. But like I said, he gave Genghis Khan, his due because he was the only one, the only non-white that was able to, basically encroach into, the white, part of Eurasia. So, I mean, all this stuff, in my opinion, it just screams insecurity when it comes to the white nationalists. It's like inferiority complex, insecurity. I had to explain to a guy recently, we were talking, he didn't even know that this was a thing with the whole Viking thing. He was like, what do you mean the white nationalists? I was like, that's why they want to be Vikings. I was like, they want to be Vikings because, one, Vikings are the representation of white male hypermasculinity, because white male hypermasculinity doesn't exist unless you go to fucking Vikings. Black men have hypermasculinity because of street thugs and culture and pop smoke and, all that, stuff due to prolonged exposure to poverty. But white men don't have that. So they got to go to Vikings. The other reason they're going to Vikings and this whole Nordic freaking cultural appropriation is because many of them, again, they're anti-Semites, and they recognize how Semitic, Christianity is, which is why, again, they're trying to get away from the Jewishness, of Christianity, and they're running to the, the what they consider the pure Aryan concepts of Nordic mythology and culture, because they see that as pure white. So they're pivoting, and even with the Nazis, they also subscribe to this sort of pure Nordic white Aryan race, and then you got like the Vinland people. You can go to the ADLU, the Anti-Defamation League, and look at the tattoos, and I'd say 40% of the tattoos have some sort of Nordic connotation to it. You know what I mean? Whether it's the Volknot or the, what's that shit, the sundial or whatever it's called. I mean, there's all different type of ones that they got. But they're running to that, and he was blown away. I just sent him a bunch of videos, and he was blown away at He's like, I didn't even know this was going on. I was like, yeah. So you got the white Christian nationalist, and then you got the, the other, like, we was Vikings and shit. We was Vikings and shit, right? And so they over there with that shit. And if you, seriously speaking, if you look at most of these white nationalists and these white supremacists, like they're poor working class whites or below working class whites. They're not the white people that got money. They're not somebody said that even Richard Spencer acknowledged this. He basically said that the white people that are a part of the white nationalist groups are losers. They don't really have anything going on. They're not making a whole lot of money. They're not what you would call white men of means, white men of the upper, echelon, white men that are, basically, just getting a bunch of bitches. They're not. And that only adds to the frustration, again, when, white women are not loyal and, they see these white women out here dating other men in an economy, that is bad, where they can't flex their typical, model of the 1950s to 1960s white male stability. They can't flex that. They don't get to partake in that. And what I think even makes it worse is the fact that the boomers don't even sympathize with them. The white boomers don't look at them and like, you're a failure, you're a loser. So again, going back to what I said about the Vietnam vets, that came back, they were sent off to war at 19, and they were catching hell from the World War II vets and the Korean War vets that treated them like they lost the war and they lost America, some face. Right? And so that's how the white boomers look at these young millennials and zillennials, that they're somehow, that they still think that they live in this, industrialized nation, and America has been completely deindustrialized. So you take that away, you take away the ability to purchase a home, right? Then you say, oh, the only way you can get a job is if you have a college degree. Then people go to college, they put themselves in massive amounts of debt, right? And then, now, I don't know if you all heard about this, but most of you probably have by now. They want to eliminate, degrees from many of these, companies and corporations, right? For these, like, I don't even know what they're eliminating them for, because some of these you will need that. Like if you're going to be an engineer, you're going to need an engineering degree. They don't teach you engineering in high school, so where the fuck are you going to learn it from? Granted, you can learn a lot online, but I still think you would need a degree for that. But some of these other jobs, and there's many jobs that don't need a degree. So the companies teach everything internally. But to me, that still doesn't matter if, okay, they eliminate the degree, but the pay still sucks. The issue is not, the degree as much as it is the fucking pay. You see? And it's stupid because at the end of the day, like even just looking at it, it's like, oh, well, we don't require a degree, so you can get this job without having a degree, which is only going to equate to therefore we don't have to pay you because as much because you don't have a degree, and therefore you don't have loans that you have to pay back. So again, we can continue to justify not paying you shit. That still doesn't allow you to buy a house and buy anything else. Yeah, that's great that you don't have student loan debt, but again, the white people white men in particular, y'all don't ask the right questions, right? What type of wages are you talking about? What type of money are you saying? In terms of, is it full medical and dental? Is it, what is it, salary? Like, I mean, what is it? Is it hourly? Like, what's the pay? What is it going to look like, especially after taxes, right? Because I got realized income, right? You're the corporation. You go off and, you do some sneaky shit like, take, your stocks in your company and freaking, go get a loan against the stocks that you claim to have, and then you just simply pay interest on the stocks because debt is not taxed. So you get to live off of that loan that you took out. And then, even you could take that and invest that in some other way. But at the end of the day, you're not paying taxes. Meanwhile, the employee, that's making his measly $45,000 a year, is his income is realized income and it's being taxed. At some point in time, the working white proletariat is going to have to recognize that this system benefits the business class. The business class are the oligarchs, right? They're the new kings, queens, and nobles. That is what they are. They're the ones that actually run things in this country. It's a plutocracy. It's not a democracy. They're the ones. And then every, couple of years, we go through these bullshit ass election cycles, where again, like the electorate is not informed enough to make an informed decision about what's going on. They get caught up in all this emotional shit, whether it's race or whether it's gender or whether it's religion or whether it's, some stupid ass idea that's an abstraction and isn't even something real or tangible that you can run your fingers through. And you get these people running around, and I'm talking to white people because you're the majority of the electorate. And y'all, especially when it comes to, I don't have a problem with, the concept of conservatism, because there's certain things I'm conservative about, like, family structure and marriage and things like that. And then there's other things that I'm liberal about. Like, I don't care if two men are over there booty banging. I don't care. Do I want to live in a majority gay neighborhood? No, I do not. As a heterosexual man with my heteronormative cisgendered family, no, I do not. But I don't care that they exist. I don't care that they're doing their thing behind their closed doors. You know what I mean? To me, it's just all that gay pride parade shit is just as inappropriate when they're out there, being sexually suggestive as it would be for me to, grab my wife and fuck her in the middle of the street. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be inappropriate, but somehow like gay people think like it's cool for them to be able to put that type of shit on display. Like I said, I'm conservative about some things, I'm liberal about others. But the problem I have with white conservatives in particular, and it's not to say I don't have a problem with white liberals, because a lot of their shit is fake and phony, but the problem I have with, conservatives is, they're not informed. They get caught up in the abstractions, the ideas, religion, all this shit that's not real. And they don't understand enough about how the system works and how the system is, revolves around class more than it revolves around anything else. So anyway, I probably made another 2-hour video, which I didn't intend to make, but these are just some of the thoughts that I'm having about, the freaking white nationalists, the fucking all their paranoia, the where the economy's going, the pivot away from the West. I mean, the West is, it just completely lost all credibility. It doesn't get it, and it thinks that it needs to protect itself by like having its nations be pure white. I'm like, that's not going to change the fact that the white people that control all the corporations and institutions and all that shit don't want to pay. They're the reason why you can't afford your standard of living. And again, like I said, the other problem is that, there is a shift away from, these non-white nations allowing themselves to be continuously exploited by, the West. And as much as the West is going to try to maintain control and maintain dominance and maintain, power, again, with the internet, information, shit that people can expose in real time, I'm saying the West might be able to leverage, its power and its military might and all that, but they're not going to be able to maintain the image simultaneously that they are, of, good moral character. I mean, like I said, I think all of that has been lost with Israel. So it's either going to be open savagery, which will have the whole world hating the West, or, it's going to be, these sort of backdoor manipulations that the West has always done, all the stuff that's in classified, files and shit. But everybody will know, that of, what's actually going down, and there actually will be, a counter narrative to, these actions, that it won't just be, the West saying, oh, well, this is what we did, and it's like, nah, that's not why you went down there. You went down there and you did this fuck shit over here, and that's why those people are in the predicament that they're in. You want to sell the idea that you went down there as some sort of savior. We recognize the communism was expanding and we were bringing them freedom. They try to paint that sort of narrative. And you saw this with 9/11, and I talked about this before, where they, the white people, when 9/11 happened, even though, I don't know if y'all read that letter from Osama bin Laden. He was like, yeah, y'all keep despots in power in the Middle East. Y'all been meddling, y'all been fucking with us, and you support Israel. And that's why I bombed your fucking buildings. Right? But you talk to your average white person, oh, why did they attack us on 9/11? I seen all these white guys with these 9/11 tattoos and shit like that. Hey, why was America attacked on 9/11? Because they hate our freedom. That's why. They hate who we are as Americans. That's what I mean when I talk about the abstraction, like these fake ass patriotic ideas of nothing, of nothingness. This American exceptionalism that America is the best and the most righteous and just and most Christian valued, morally oriented nation in the world. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. America does a bunch of fucking fucked up shit, as well as, the European nations. And at the end of the day, the reason why they're letting the immigrants is not because Europeans feel guilty and they have a bleeding heart. They want their motherfucking cheap labor. That's what they want. And that's what the white proletariat doesn't understand. They want to ignore. And again, the biggest mistake that they make is, yeah, you get your cheap labor for the first generation, but the second generation that speaks the language, knows the culture, and is looking at their white classmates and they're like, hey, how come I can't live like that? How come I don't have access to that? I'm Dutch. I'm Norwegian. You know what I'm saying? I'm Swedish. Why can't I live like that? Why can't I have access to that? Because, motherfucker, we only brought your parents here to clean toilets. Because no Swedish person, would work that job, because it doesn't pay shit. We brought you here to exploit your parents. That's why we brought you here. And now we wish you would just go away. We don't want to have to deal with you. Just go away. We got no opportunities for you. We don't like migrants, right? The next thing the kids, they joining gangs and shit like that, and they turn on each other internally, right? Because you get into conflicts with the people that you're around. And if you don't have access to, capital, if you don't have access to opportunities, in whatever nation that you're in, and you're a young man and you want to have nice things, and it's just going to, lead to a life of crime. And, then you got to deal with that problem. And then that problem gets hijacked by, the white nationalists. And the white nationalists are like, see, and these people, they come here and they bring their culture and they bring their hedonism. And that's why their countries are shitholes. And that's why they come here, because they want to be around us because of our awesomeness. And our civilization is intact, but theirs isn't. And that's why they come here. Right? Completely ignoring the fact that if you want them to integrate and assimilate, it's not just about integrating socially. You also have to integrate them economically. But again, since you brought them here as cheap labor, you don't want to do that. You want them to just be, freaking toilet cleaners in perpetuity and cab drivers in perpetuity. You want them to maintain and stay at the lowest rung of your society because they're not you. And you don't want them, being on par with you, because then, they would be a part of the, decision-making component of the society. And that would change, the flavor of the culture and the flavor of the society. Right. So you want to maintain, its Norwegianness or its Finnishness or its Swedishness. You want to maintain that. Right. But you have these, this population of migrants that you brought there as cheap labor, and they're having more babies than you are. Because in order to maintain the middle class lifestyle that you want to have, you have to, not have as many babies. Meanwhile, the immigrants that come there, the first wave, they having tons of babies, 4, 5, 6, 7 children. Right? And then they get to a critical mass, and then you're bitching about how there's too many Muslims or there's too many of these other people, right? So the whole way white people operate, because it's their whole system is structured on exploitation of not only themselves but other people, and they want to maintain, they feel like they as white people, they all need to be in this middle class, situation. Which again costs money, because, the system of capitalism, the way it's set up is, you have all this productivity that exists, but, only a small group of people disproportionately hoard the majority of the wealth in that system. And you just end up with the dynamics of white people having less children because they have to find a balance between having children and living the quality of life that they want to live. Where other groups, immigrants, they don't operate like that. Their children might, their grandchildren most likely will operate on that. But that first wave, no, you're going to get outproduced every fucking time by that first wave. Every time. You see? And that's just I don't know. That's just the way that the world is. Poor people who are used to poverty, they have babies. They just what they do. It's like, even when I read that CDC report, it said, when it came to the Hispanic population, I mean, those that are born outside the country, they have babies like crazy. U.S. citizen Hispanic and Latinos, their numbers are comparable to everybody else's. But once you remove them, you see, who's having all the babies. So there's a difference between, the sort of American mentality of, the standard of living that people want, and how many kids they're going to have and what they can afford in their standard of living. If you want to change that, then you would have to have a society that is conducive to family formation and where people can have, children, in high numbers and still live a comfortable lifestyle. But I don't see that happening anytime. So I don't see the fight for that. Right? I mean, the only nation I've seen that's done something to incentivize having children is Russia. Russia did something to incentivize having children. I mean, everything from like rewards to like free cars for refrigerators and everything. Minor shit. But I think Hungary has the best example where they just basically said if you have 4 children, because they're still below, they're like 1.49. You have to be above 2 in order to have, to be above the replacement rate, 2.1. But they were at 1.29. And they increased their birth rate by basically saying if you have 4 or more children, you don't have to pay income tax. That's one way to do it. I can't see America doing anything like that. Because again, in order to maintain the illusion of, of fair justice, equality, and all that other shit, that those policies would have to be universal and apply to the very people that the system of white supremacy doesn't want to have more babies. You see? So, that's the whole problem, right? It's like, how do we maintain white people being the majority in this country? How do we do something specifically to maintain white people being the majority in this country? And every policy, every law that that would be created would incentivize everybody to have more kids, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But, go tell a white nationalist that, and they're like, no, we just want more white babies. We don't want more babies for everybody, just more white babies. Because we want to maintain power, because we want to maintain the ability to set the standard, set the pace, set the tone, define things, right? And make our culture the premier culture. We don't want anybody else's culture, right? Despite the fact that, I mean, it's like, say, white supremacists, they'll obviously disagree, but I'm saying, like, when you think about like African Americans and just like America, like if I had to like a fast forward film clip of America from like 1900 all the way up to 2000, it's like black people are all throughout that, especially in entertainment, sports, and even some of the sciences that only now we're beginning to, find out about people who were in the shadows, who weren't allowed to, participate, in the society. It's like who's the guy? What is it? Uncle? What's the Jack Daniels? Hold on. Is it Uncle? What is it? Hold on. Let me find this. Y'all know what I'm going to talk about. And that whiskey is fire. Absolutely fire. Hold on. Uncle Ernest. What is it? Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey. Why I say Ernest? Uncle Nearest. He was he was basically the guy who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. And there's an actual picture of him. No, an actual picture of his son sitting next to Jack Daniels in, like, I don't know, what is that? Like, it's got to be the 1800s. Jack Daniels, which, technically speaking, Uncle Nearest son. Let me see images. Yup, sitting right next to him in the picture. Which right in the middle with all the other white guys in the picture, which demonstrates and shows you, especially at that time, and he's sitting right next to him too, how much respect he must have had for his uncle, because his company and the quality of life that he was living wouldn't even have been possible if it wasn't for the knowledge that was bestowed upon him on how to make whiskey. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.